The smell of vegetable soup filled the small kitchen in the lower levels of Station Meridian 7. Stirred the large pot with steady hands, watching the steam rise into the recycled air. He had been doing this for 3 years now, ever since he left his old life behind. Every day, the same routine. Make soup, feed the hungry, clean up, and do it all again tomorrow. That's the last of the protein powder, said, setting down an empty container. She was young, barely 20, with tired eyes that had seen too much too soon. We'll need to request more from the station supply office. Nodded, they'll probably deny us again, they always do. He didn't sound bitter, just tired. We'll make do with what we have. The soup kitchen wasn't much to look at. 3 tables, a dozen chairs, and walls that hadn't been painted in decades. But it was warm and it was safe, and that was more than most people in the lower sectors had. Aliens of all kinds came through his doors. Some had fur, some had scales, some didn't have faces that could recognize. It didn't matter. Everyone got soup. The evening rush had ended an hour ago. Was washing the last of the bowls when called out her goodbye and left for the night. He was alone now, the way he preferred to be at the end of each day. Alone with his thoughts and the quiet hum of the station's life support systems. He was about to lock the door when he heard it, a small sound like scratching. It came from outside near the waste disposal area. Grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the corridor. The lights here were dim, half of them broken and never repaired. Station maintenance didn't care about the lower levels. At first he saw nothing. Then the flashlight beam caught something moving, a small shape huddled against the wall, trembling. Moved closer slowly. He had learned to be careful around frightened creatures. The figure was small, no bigger than a human child of 5 or 6 years. But it was definitely not human. Its skin was almost see-through, and beneath the surface could see patterns of light like stars under ice. The patterns were flickering, weak and unsteady. The creature looked up at him with large eyes that seemed to hold too much sadness for something so young. It made a sound, soft and desperate. Didn't need a translator to know what that sound meant. He had heard it before, in a dozen different languages and from a dozen different species. Hunger. Hey there, said softly, kneeling down. It's okay, I'm not going to hurt you. The creature pressed itself against the wall, shaking harder. One thin arm was wrapped around its middle. Could see its ribs through that transparent skin, could see the light inside growing dimmer. He stood up slowly and went back into the kitchen. He ladled soup into a bowl, made sure it wasn't too hot, and carried it back outside. The creature was still there, watching him with those enormous eyes. Sat down on the floor a safe distance away and placed the bowl between them. You must be hungry, he said. Go ahead, it's okay. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the creature moved. It crawled forward, slow and careful, never taking its eyes off. When it reached the bowl, it stopped and looked at him again, as if asking permission. It's yours, said, eat. The creature grabbed the bowl with both hands and drank. Not sipped, drank. The soup disappeared in seconds. When the bowl was empty, the creature looked at it again, and he could see the light patterns under its skin growing a little brighter. More, asked. He brought 2 more bowls. The creature ate slower this time, and by the 3rd bowl the shaking had stopped. The light beneath its skin was steady now, a soft blue-green glow that pulsed gently. Sat with the creature for an hour, not speaking, just being there. He had learned that sometimes presence was enough. Sometimes just knowing you weren't alone was what mattered most. The creature's eyes began to close. Carefully picked it up, surprised at how light it was, and carried it inside. He laid it on his own cot in the back room, covering it with a clean blanket. The creature curled up into a ball and fell asleep instantly. Watched it for a while. He wondered where it had come from, who it belonged to, how long it had been hungry. He thought about calling station services, but they would just put it in a holding cell while they figured out what species it was. Better to let it rest for now. He settled into a chair and dozed off himself. When he woke a few hours later, the first thing he noticed was the silence. The cot was empty. The blanket was folded neatly, which surprised him. The creature was gone. Arrived early the next morning and found staring at the empty cot. "What happened?" she asked. Told her about the creature. Face went pale. "You didn't scan it. You didn't check what species it was. What if it was dangerous?" "It was a child," said simply. "A hungry child." "You can't save everyone," said, not unkindly. She had said this before many times. "I don't need to save everyone," replied. "Just the ones in front of me." They went about their day, made soup. People came and ate. Some thanked him, some didn't. It didn't matter. By evening, he had almost forgotten about the strange visitor. Almost. As he was closing up, he found something on the floor near the cot. A small piece of something that looked like crystal, glowing with a faint light. He picked it up, turning it over in his hands. It was warm to the touch and pulsed with the same blue-green glow he had seen under the creature's skin. Put it in his pocket and locked the door. Outside, the station hummed with life. Ships came and went. People lived and died and went about their business. And somewhere out there, a small creature with stars under its skin was alive because someone had given it soup. That was enough it had to be enough. He didn't know that 3 days later, everything would change. He didn't know that the simple act of feeding a hungry child would bring something dangerous and deadly to his door. He didn't know that the mother was coming. But for now, in this moment, he was content. He had done what he could, what he always did. He had seen hunger and answered it with kindness. That was all any human could do. 3 days passed like any other. Made soup, served it to the hungry masses, and cleaned up when the day ended. He kept the small glowing crystal in his pocket, taking it out sometimes to look at it. It reminded him that small acts of kindness mattered, even if you never saw the results. On the third evening, was cutting vegetables when the lights went out. The kitchen plunged into darkness. Then the emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in red. Somewhere in the distance, alarms began to wail. Dropped the pot she was holding, and it clattered loudly on the floor. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice shaking. Moved to the window and looked out. In the docking area, he could see something that made his blood run cold. A ship was attached to the station, but not at any of the regular docking ports. It had forced its way in, cutting through the outer hull like it was paper. "That's not authorized," said quietly. The alarms got louder. Through the window, saw station security running toward the unauthorized ship. They had weapons drawn, shouting orders that no one could hear over the noise. Then something emerged from the ship. It was tall, much taller than any human. Even from this distance, could see it was covered in some kind of natural armor, like plates of bone grown from its skin. It moved with deadly grace, like a predator that had never known fear. Station security opened fire. The creature didn't even slow down. It moved through them like wind through grass, its movements too fast to follow. Bodies flew through the air, crashing into walls and crumpling to the ground. The creature wasn't killing them, realized, just removing them from its path. "We need to leave," said, backing toward the door. "Now, we need to go now." But couldn't move. He watched as the creature stopped and turned its head as if sensing something. Then it began walking directly toward the lower sectors, directly toward them. "It's coming here," whispered. Grabbed his arm, "Then we run." The door to the soup kitchen burst open. Not from the creature, but from something much smaller. The child, the one had fed 3 days ago, tumbled into the room. Its light patterns were flashing bright and urgent, cycling through colors hadn't seen before. The child ran straight to and grabbed his sleeve with both hands. It was making sounds, high-pitched and desperate, pulling him toward the door. "It's trying to tell us something," said. "I don't care what it's trying to tell us," shouted. "That thing out there is heading this way, and I'm not staying to find out why." But knelt down, looking at the child's face. Those big eyes were filled with urgency but not fear. Not exactly. It was trying to communicate something important. The door exploded inward, not broken down but carefully moved aside, pushed with controlled strength. The creature from the ship ducked through the doorway and stood to its full height in the soup kitchen. Up close it was terrifying. 8 feet tall, maybe more. Its skin was the same transparent material as the child's, but underneath was thick armor-like plating that glowed with a deep red light. Its face was angular, with sharp features and eyes that burned like coals. It had weapons, large ones strapped to its body, humming with power that could feel in his teeth. Screamed and ran. 2 other workers who had been in the back room fled with her, heard their footsteps disappearing down the corridor, but stood his ground, not because he was brave. He was terrified. His legs felt like water and his heart was trying to break through his ribs, but the child was still holding his sleeve, and something told him that running would be the wrong choice. The creature raised one of its weapons and pointed it at. The weapon charged with a sound like thunder building in the distance. The child let go of sleeve and moved. It placed itself between and the creature, spreading its small arms wide. It made a sound, a complex series of chirps and whistles that seemed to carry meaning. The creature's weapon lowered slightly. Its glowing patterns shifted from red to orange, then to a confused yellow-amber color. It made a sound back, deeper and more resonant. The child kept talking, gesturing between and itself. It pointed to the pot of soup, to the bowls on the counter, to the blanket still folded on the cot in the back room. The creature's weapon lowered completely. It stared at for a long moment and forced himself to meet its gaze. Those burning eyes seemed to see right through him, measuring him, judging him. A small drone flew into the room, damaged and sparking, but still functional. It was one of the station's translator units. The screen flickered to life with text in several languages. The creature spoke, its voice like rocks grinding together, and the drone translated. "You fed my daughter." The words appeared on the screen in simple text, looked at the child, then back at the towering creature. "She was hungry," he said simply. The creature tilted its head. "She was supposed to stay hidden. I had to leave her while I repaired my ship. She was told not to come out." The creature looked at the child with what might have been frustration, though couldn't read alien expressions well. "But she got hungry." "Kids do that," said. His voice was steadier than he felt. "They get hungry and they forget about rules." The creature studied him for another long moment. Then its light patterns shifted again, this time to a deep blue. This is Lyra. We are." The drone struggled to translate the species name, showing several possible variations. He said. "I run this soup kitchen." "You saved my daughter's life," said. The drone's translation seemed inadequate for whatever words she was actually using. She was starving. She had been without food for 2 days. Another day and her light would have gone out forever. Looked at little Lyra, who was watching the exchange with bright, curious eyes. "I just gave her soup," he said. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," said firmly. "Most would have ignored her or called authorities who would have locked her in a cage. You fed her. You let her sleep. You asked for nothing." She paused. "In my culture, this creates a debt, a life debt. You saved my child." "I don't want a debt," said quickly. "I was just being human." "The debt exists whether you want it or not," replied. The drone's screen showed her words in red, indicating importance. "It is sacred, unbreakable. You are now under my protection, human. I will guard you with my life." Before could respond's head snapped toward the window. Her patterns flashed red again and she raised her weapon. "He is here," she said quietly. "The one I have been hunting. He followed me to this station." "Who?" asked. "A killer," said. "A destroyer of worlds. He knows I am here now. He knows Lyra witnessed his crimes. He will try to eliminate us both." She looked at. "And anyone near us will be in danger. You should run. Take your people and go to the upper levels." Thought about the hundreds of refugees living in the lower sectors, families with children, old folks with nowhere else to go, people who depended on his soup kitchen. "How dangerous is this killer?" asked. His eyes burned brighter. "Dangerous enough to destroy this entire section of the station if it means killing me." Felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Then I guess I'd better help you stop him." Stared at him. "You are small, fragile human. What help could you possibly be?" Smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I know every tunnel, every hiding spot, every secret path in these lower levels. I've been feeding people here for 3 years. I know this place better than anyone." Considered this. Then her patterns shifted to a color hadn't seen before, a deep purple that seemed almost respectful. "Very well, human, we hunt together." Little Lyra chirped happily and grabbed both their hands. Came back an hour later with station security. She found sitting at one of the tables with an 8-foot alien warrior, discussing plans like they were old friends. Little Lyra was curled up on the cot, sleeping peacefully. "What are you doing?" hissed, pulling aside. "That thing almost killed a dozen security officers." "She didn't kill anyone," corrected. "And her name is, she's a mother protecting her child." Looked at him like he had lost his mind. "She's a warrior, a bounty hunter. She doesn't belong here." "Neither did Lyra when she was starving," said quietly. "But I helped her anyway, and now her mother needs help too." The security officers wanted to arrest. They had their weapons drawn and were shouting orders. Simply sat there, her own weapons within easy reach, watching them with calm eyes. Stepped between them. "She's not the problem," he told the officers. "There's someone else on this station, someone worse, someone who wants to kill everyone in the lower sectors." The lead officer laughed. "And we're supposed to believe the word of an illegal armed alien." "Believe what you want," said. "But when the explosions start, remember I warned you." The officers eventually left, muttering threats about coming back with reinforcements. Knew they wouldn't. The lower sectors were always last priority for station security. When they were gone, spoke. "You defended me. Why?" "Because you're not the enemy," said simply. Slight patterns shifted to that deep purple again. "Tell me about this killer you're hunting," said, sitting back down. His expression darkened. Through the translator drone, she explained. He is a species known for cruelty. 5 years ago, he commanded a military fleet. He was ordered to disable human colony ships. Instead, he destroyed them. Thousands died." His hands clenched into fists. He remembered hearing about those attacks. News reports that talked about families lost, children who would never grow up, futures erased in seconds. "The government responsibility," continued. "But Lyra and I were nearby. We saw his ship. We recorded his identification codes. He knows we have proof of his crimes." "So he's here to eliminate you," finished. "Yes, and he has planted an explosive device somewhere in the lower sectors. If he cannot kill us quietly, he will destroy everything. Us, you, everyone who lives here. He does not care about innocent lives." Stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the familiar corridors of the lower levels. He knew every family down here, the couple with their 3 kids, old who had lost his legs in an accident, the group who sang songs on Friday evenings. "How much time do we have?" asked. "Unknown. He will trigger the device when he feels cornered, or when he finds us." "Then we need to find him first," said, "and we need to find that bomb." Studied him. "You understand what you are offering. This is not your fight. You could take your friend and flee to the upper levels, save yourself." Thought about running. He thought about safety, about living to see another day. Then he thought about all the people who would die if he did nothing. People who had no idea danger was coming. People who trusted him to feed them, to care for them. "My old life," said quietly. "I was a medic. I served on a colony ship. We were attacked by raiders. I was in the engine room when they breached the hull. I survived, My wife didn't, my daughter didn't. He paused. I couldn't save them, but I can save the people here. I have to try. Stood and placed one large hand on shoulder. Despite her size and strength, her touch was gentle. You have a warrior's heart, small human. I am honored to fight beside you. They made a plan. Reluctantly agreed to take Lyra somewhere safe, somewhere in the upper levels where station authorities actually cared about security. The child didn't want to go, but spoke to her in their language, firm but loving. Finally, Lyra hugged her mother, then hugged and left with. She likes you, observed. I gave her soup, said with a small smile. Kids remember kindness. They started their search in the places knew best. The lower levels were a maze of corridors, maintenance tunnels, and forgotten storage rooms. Most station maps didn't even show half of what was down here, but had explored every inch during his 3 years running the soup kitchen. Would need power for his device, said, and privacy to assemble it. Thought about this. There's an old maintenance bay in Section 7. It was shut down 2 years ago when they upgraded the air recycling system. Nobody goes there anymore, but the power lines are still active. They moved through the corridors silently, moved with surprising quiet for something so large, led the way, taking them through paths that avoided the main corridors. He saw faces he recognized through doorways, people preparing meals, putting children to bed, living their lives unaware of the danger. Section 7 was dark and empty. The air smelled stale, recycled too many times. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, casting strange shadows on the walls. They found signs of recent activity, footprints in the dust, discarded food containers, and in the far corner of the maintenance bay, a device. It was about the size of a large suitcase, covered in strange symbols and glowing indicators. Wires ran from it to the power conduit in the wall. A timer displayed numbers that couldn't read, but the meaning was clear enough. That's it, said grimly. Military explosive, enough to destroy this entire section and the 3 above it. Can you disarm it? Asked. Approached it carefully, studying the device. No, it is coded to his genetic signature. Only he can disable it. If we try to tamper with it, it will explode immediately. Felt his stomach drop. So what do we do? We said. We force him to disable it. A voice echoed through the empty bay, cold and mocking. You will do no such thing. They spun around. A figure stood in the doorway, backlit by the corridor lights. It was tall, with rough gray skin and eyes like black glass. It wore the tattered remains of a military uniform and carried weapons that hummed with lethal energy. It growled. Replied, his voice like ice. Still dragging your worthless spawn across the galaxy, I see. And now you've found a pet human to die with you. How touching. His hand instinctively went to his pocket, where he kept his medical scanner. It was all he had that even remotely resembled a tool. Raised a small device in his hand. This is the detonator, he said casually. Attack me and I press the button. Everyone dies, you, me, and every pathetic refugee in these lower levels. He smiled, and it was a terrible thing. So many humans, just like the ones I killed before, weak, soft, believing kindness will save them. Why? Asked, his voice steady despite his fear. Why kill all these people? They've done nothing to you. Looked at him with contempt. Because I can. Because your species is a plague on the galaxy. You spread everywhere, offering help, showing compassion, making friends with every creature you meet. You make the universe soft. So you'd rather fill it with cruelty, shot back. I would rather fill it with strength, said. The strong survive, the weak perish. This is natural law. Thought fast. He glanced at the detonator in his hand. It was human-made, he realized, probably stolen or bought on the black market. He recognized the model from his days as a medic. They'd used similar devices for controlled demolitions. And he knew those devices had a weakness. You're right about one thing, said, taking a small step forward. Humans are everywhere, we've spread across the galaxy. Do you know why? His eyes narrowed. Because you breed like parasites. No, said, taking another step. Because we adapt, we learn, we use what's available. He pulled out his medical scanner. Even our medical tools have multiple functions. He activated the scanner and pointed it at the detonator. The scanner emitted a high-frequency pulse designed to map internal injuries, but at this range, it would also scramble unshielded electronic signals. The detonator in his hand sparked and went dead. For 1 second everything was still, then moved. She crossed the distance to, in the blink of an eye, her weapon raised, was fast too, bringing his own weapon up. They collided like thunder, crashing through equipment and shaking the walls. Ran to the explosive device. His heart pounded as he stared at the alien symbols. He had no idea how to disarm it, but he knew he had to try. The fight between and was brutal and fast. They moved like storms given form, their weapons crackling with energy. Every blow shook the walls. Every missed shot left burning holes in metal. Forced himself to focus on the device. His hands shook as he examined it. The timer showed symbols he couldn't read, but they were counting down. He could tell that much from the way they changed, faster and faster. Think, he told himself. Think like a medic. What would you do if this was a patient? He pulled out his tools. Medical scanners, calibration tools, even a simple multimeter he used for checking the soup kitchen's wiring. Nothing designed for this, but maybe, just maybe, he could figure it out. Behind him, slammed into a wall. The snarled and fired his weapon point-blank. Twisted aside and the shot went wide, exploding against a support beam. The beam groaned and began to bend. The structure won't hold much longer, shouted. Scanned the device with his medical scanner, adjusting the frequency to pick up energy signatures instead of biological signs. The screen showed a mess of readings, but one thing became clear. There was a central power core, and from it, 6 different trigger mechanisms spread out like a web. 6 triggers. If even one activated, the whole thing would blow. He traced the wires with shaking fingers. Each trigger was connected to the timer. When the timer reached 0, all 6 would activate simultaneously. But there was something else. A 7th wire, thicker than the others, running from the power core to a panel on the side. The genetic lock, the thing that only could open. His mind raced. In his old life, he'd worked with bioscanners, devices that could read genetic markers for medical treatment. The scanner in his hand could do the same thing, in theory, but these locks were designed to be unbreakable. Unless you thought like a human. Humans broke unbreakable things all the time. They found workarounds, shortcuts, methods that the original designers never considered. It was what they were good at. Pressed his scanner against the genetic lock and activated it. The device buzzed, trying to read the genetic code it needed. Of course, it failed. Didn't have genetics. But what if he didn't need them? He adjusted the scanner, changing its parameters. Instead of trying to match genetic code, he programmed it to emit a broad-spectrum genetic signal, cycling through thousands of possible variations per second. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was all he had. The lock beeped, the panel slid open. Inside were the 6 trigger wires, all converging on a central node, and next to them, a simple mechanical switch, the emergency override. Of course, there was an override. Even weapons of mass destruction had fail-safes, in case the person who planted them needed to abort. Reached for the switch. A massive hand grabbed his wrist, had broken away from and crossed the room in seconds. His grip was like iron, crushing his bones. His face was battered and bleeding, but his eyes burned with hatred. "You think you're clever, human," snarled. "You think your tricks matter." He twisted his arm, cried out in pain, feeling something crack. His vision went white for a moment. "All you've done is delay the inevitable," continued. "I'll kill you both, destroy this sector, and disappear. No one will remember you. No one will care." Through the pain, looked up at. "You're wrong," he gasped. "People will remember. That's what humans do. We remember, we tell stories, we honor those who show kindness." He managed a pained smile. "And we never ever stop fighting for what's right." Something flew through the air and struck in the side of the head. It was a piece of debris from the fight, thrown with perfect accuracy. His grip loosened for just a second. That was all needed. She tackled from the side, driving him away from and the device. They crashed through a wall into the next room, their weapons firing in all directions. The maintenance bay was falling apart around them. Didn't hesitate, he threw the override switch. The device went silent, the glowing indicators faded to black, the timer stopped. For a moment just sat there, breathing hard, cradling his injured arm. He had done it. The bomb was disabled. Then the ceiling collapsed. The damage from the fight had weakened the entire structure. Support beams that had stood for decades gave way all at once. Tons of metal and concrete came crashing down. Tried to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. The pain in his arm had spread through his whole body. He was too slow, too hurt, too human. Strong hands grabbed him and lifted him up. Had appeared from nowhere, her armor cracked and her light patterns flickering. She threw over her shoulder and ran. They made it out seconds before the entire bay collapsed in on itself. The explosion of dust and debris chased them down the corridor. Didn't stop running until they were 3 sections away. She sat down gently against a wall. He looked up at her, dazed. He managed to ask. "Buried," said. Her voice was strained. "The collapse took him. If he survived, it will be days before he can dig himself out. By then I will have called my people. They will come for him." Nodded, then he noticed the way was standing, favoring her left side. "You're hurt." "I am," she said with pride. "I do not fall easily." But even as she said it, she swayed slightly. "Sit down," ordered, falling back into his medic training. "Let me look at you." "Your arm is broken," pointed out. "I have another one," said. "Sit." To his surprise, she obeyed. He examined her injuries as best he could. Several of her armor plates were cracked, and beneath them her transparent skin showed damage. The light patterns were irregular, stuttering. He used supplies from his medical kit to stabilize the worst of it. It wasn't much, but it would help until they could get real treatment. As he worked, watched him. "You disabled the device," she said quietly. "I saw what you did. That was clever, using the medical scanner to trick the genetic lock." "Humans adapt," said, echoing his earlier words. "We use what we have." "You saved thousands of lives today," continued. "You saved my daughter. You saved me. And you did it all with tools meant for healing, not fighting." Finished bandaging a crack in her armor. "That's the point," he said. "Humans would rather heal than fight, but when we have to fight, we fight for others, for the weak, for the innocent." His patterns shifted to that deep purple color. "This is why your species will survive," she said. "Not because you are strong, because you care." In the distance, they could hear alarms and voices. Station security was finally responding, along with emergency services. The lower sectors would be evacuated and checked for structural damage. It would be chaos for days. But everyone would be alive. Looked at, "What will you do now?" "I will wait for my people," she said. "They will extract from the rubble and take him to face justice. The evidence Lyra witnessed will convict him. The families of those he killed will have closure." "And after that?" Was quiet for a moment. "After that I must return to my clan, to my home, to continue my life as a warrior," she looked at. "But the debt remains. I owe you a life. 2 lives if we count what you did today." "I told you I don't want," began. "I know," interrupted gently. "You want nothing, you ask for nothing. This is what makes you worthy." She reached into a compartment in her armor and pulled out a small device. "Take this. It is a communicator tuned to my ship's frequency. If you ever need help, call, I will come. No matter where I am in the galaxy, I will come." took the device with his good hand. It was warm, pulsing with the same energy as light patterns. "Thank you," he said simply. They sat together in silence as the rescue teams got closer. Two warriors from different worlds, different species, different philosophies. But in this moment, they understood each other perfectly. Found them an hour later with little Lyra running ahead of her. The child threw herself at, chirping happily. He hugged her with his good arm, and she glowed with joy. "You're both insane," said, but there were tears in her eyes. "Completely insane." "Probably," agreed, and for the first time in years he laughed. Really laughed. The medical center smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. Sat on an exam table while a doctor set his broken arm. The pain medication was starting to work, making everything feel distant and fuzzy. "You're lucky it was a clean break," the doctor said, sealing the medical cast with practiced efficiency. 6 weeks and you should be fine, though I'd recommend avoiding fights with alien war criminals in the future." "I'll try to remember that," said with a slight smile. Through the window, he could see the lower sectors. Repair crews were already at work, fixing the damage from the collapse. Station authorities had evacuated 3 sections as a precaution, but people were already being allowed to return home. The crisis was over. Appeared in the doorway holding a steaming cup. "Brought you tea," she said, handing it to him. "Real tea, not the recycled stuff we usually get." "Where'd you find real tea?" asked, taking a grateful sip. "Station administrator's office," said with a mischievous grin. "They owed us after we saved a few thousand lives." Raised an eyebrow. "You stole from the administrator." "I liberated underutilized resources," corrected. "There's a difference." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Finally spoke. "They're calling you a hero, you know, all over the station. The human who stood up to a war criminal, who saved the lower sectors." Shook his head. "I just did what needed to be done." "That's what heroes say," replied. "Anyway, you should see the soup kitchen. People have been leaving donations. Food, supplies, money, more than we've gotten in 3 years combined." "We'll distribute it," said. "Make sure it goes to those who need it most." "I know," said. "That's why they're donating. They know you'll use it right." 4 days later, was released from the medical center. His arm was still in a cast, but he could walk and work. He returned to the lower sectors to find his soup kitchen transformed. The old, broken door had been replaced. The walls had been repainted. New equipment filled the kitchen, all top quality, some of it better than what they used in the upper-level restaurants. There were more tables, more chairs, and a brand new stove that actually had temperature controls that worked. "What is all this?" asked, stunned. "Beamed donations, and not just from humans. Families of every species on the station contributed. The family donated the stove. Old found the chairs at a salvage sale. The group painted the walls." Walked through the transformed space, his throat tight. He touched the new counter, ran his fingers along the smooth paint. This place had been his life for 3 years, and now it was better than he had ever imagined it could be. "There's more," said, leading him to the back room. "Arrange something before she left." In the back room was a new cooling unit, large enough to store food for weeks. Next to it were sealed containers filled with high-quality protein powder, preserved vegetables, and spices that had never been able to afford. She said it was the least she could do, explained. The debt of honor, she called it. Felt tears in his eyes. He wiped them away quickly. That evening they reopened the soup kitchen. Word had spread fast and the line stretched down the corridor. Humans, aliens of a dozen different species, all waiting patiently for their turn. Stood at the stove, stirring the soup with his good hand. The smell was different, better. With the new ingredients, he could make something that was actually nutritious, not just filling. As he served, people thanked him. Some shook his hand. Some just nodded with respect. A few asked about the fight, about what had happened, answered briefly and changed the subject. He didn't do this for praise. He did it because people needed food and he could provide it. A week after the incident, a ship arrived at the station. It was a vessel, sleek and dangerous looking, covered in the same armor-like plating as herself. Was summoned to the docking bay. He went, nervous despite everything. Station administrators were there, along with security chiefs and important officials who had never cared about the lower sectors before. Emerged from the ship in full ceremonial armor. She was flanked by 4 other warriors, all imposing and deadly. Little Lyra walked beside her mother, wearing her own small set of armor that glowed with pride. The crowd parted as approached. She stopped in front of him, and to everyone's surprise, she knelt. The other warriors knelt too. Lyra ran forward and hugged legs. "Human," said, her voice amplified by a translator so everyone could hear. "You saved my daughter when she was dying. You fought beside me when you had no obligation to do so. You risked your life to protect those weaker than yourself." She paused. "By the ancient laws of my people, I name you Blade Brother. You are family to me." She stood and placed both hands on shoulders. Light flowed from her hands into him, a warm, tingling sensation. When she removed her hands, saw that his skin had faint patterns glowing beneath it, like Lyra's, but in softer colors. "This mark will fade in time," said quietly just for him, "but the bond will not. You are one of us now." The station administrators started talking about trade agreements and diplomatic relations. Ignored them. She kept her focus on. "I must leave," she said. "Is in custody. He will face trial on the home world. Justice will be served for those he killed." "I'm glad," said sincerely. "Come with us," said suddenly. "See the galaxy. You would be honored among my people. You could have wealth, status, a place in our clan." For a moment imagined it. Traveling the stars, seeing wonders he had only heard about. A life of adventure and importance. Then he looked past, through the viewport, down to where he could just barely see the lower sectors. His soup kitchen, his people, the hungry who needed him. "I can't," he said gently. "This is where I belong, these people need me." Studied his face. Then she smiled, a rare expression that made her look less like a warrior and more like a proud friend. "I understand. This is who you are, a guardian of the weak, a giver of kindness." She paused. "The galaxy needs more like you." Little Lyra pulled something from a pouch at her belt. It was a crystal, like the one she had left before, but larger and brighter. She pressed it into his hand and chirped something in her language. The translator rendered it as, "So you remember us." "I could never forget you," said, kneeling down to her level. "You taught me that kindness matters, that one bowl of soup can change everything." They said their goodbyes. Gave the communicator again, reminding him that one call would bring her from anywhere in the galaxy. The warriors saluted him as an equal. Then they returned to their ship and departed, leaving the station and heading back to the stars. Life returned to normal, or as normal as it ever was in the lower sectors. Went back to his routine. Make soup, serve the hungry, clean up, repeat. But things were different now. The donations kept coming. Volunteers appeared wanting to help. The soup kitchen expanded, serving twice as many people as before. One day, a young alien appeared at the door. It was a species had never seen before, small and covered in fur that changed colors. It looked terrified and starving. Started to call for a translator, but just smiled and ladled soup into a bowl. He set it down in front of the creature and gestured for it to eat. The alien looked at him with wide, grateful eyes and began to drink. "You don't even know what it is," said. "Don't need to," replied. "It's hungry, that's enough." That night after closing, stood in the doorway of his soup kitchen and looked out at the lower sectors. The crystal Lyra had given him sat on a shelf above the stove, glowing softly, a reminder of 2 friends from the stars. His arm still hurt. His body was tired. Tomorrow would bring more hungry people, more challenges, more struggles. But tonight he was content. Because somewhere out there, a small alien child was learning to be a warrior. A mother was serving justice to those who deserved it. And thousands of refugees were safe in their homes, alive because one human had chosen kindness over fear. The glowing patterns on his skin had faded, but he could still feel them sometimes, warm beneath the surface. A reminder that family wasn't about blood or species. It was about who you chose to protect, who you chose to help, who you chose to love. A new figure appeared at the end of the corridor. Another lost soul, another hungry child. Didn't hesitate. He went back inside, ladled more soup into a bowl, and waited. "Come in," he called out. "There's always enough." The figure approached slowly. When it entered the light, saw it was a human this time. A young girl, maybe 12 years old, with hollow eyes and dirty clothes. He set the bowl on the table and sat down across from her. She ate slowly, carefully, like she couldn't believe the food was real. "What's your name?" asked gently. As she whispered, "I'm nice to meet you," he smiled. "When you're done eating, we'll figure out how to help you, get you somewhere safe. But for now, just eat, take your time." She nodded and continued eating. Outside, the station hummed with life. Ships came and went. People lived and worked and dreamed. And in a small soup kitchen in the forgotten lower sectors, a human man fed a hungry child. It wasn't much, just soup, just kindness, just one person choosing to help another. But in a galaxy filled with darkness, sometimes one small light is enough. Sometimes one bowl of soup can save the world.